everyone, welcome back to my channel, Everlynn's Books and Tea. Today I want to try starting a new video series that I'm really excited about, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. I'm calling it the Around the World Reading Challenge, which I know is very original, but I couldn't think of a better name at this point. Maybe we'll change it in the future, we'll see. The idea behind this is pretty well known. It's that each month we're going to choose a random country and then either read a book from that country or read a book that is written by an author from that country. I've actually been doing this challenge for a couple of years now, and what I've learned is that it has introduced me to a lot of books and a lot of authors that I never would have read otherwise, and I found some really great books through this challenge, and I want to share those books with you as I come across them each month. So how this works is at the beginning of each year, I choose 12 random countries, one for each month of the year, and then each month I either read a book that is written by an author from that country or a book that is set in that country. The country list that I have chosen to use for this challenge is the World Factbook country list. I think there's like 238 countries on it that are listed as countries. So that's where I have taken all the names from if anyone was wondering or if they want to do this challenge on their own. I'm hoping through this challenge we can all learn a little bit more about the countries that we will be traveling to through reading, as well as help people find books from countries if they end up doing their own reading challenge. All right, so this will be episode 1 of this series, and I guess it's time to get started. So I thought the most fun way to reveal the location that we are going to is to first put the map of it up here without the name, and then I'm going to tell you some interesting facts about this location for those who like to play trivia and kind of guess where we may be heading this month. And then at the end, after I reveal where we'll be traveling to through reading, if this is a place that you have been to, or after hearing about it, a place that you may want to visit in the future, please let me know in the comments below. All right, so here is where we will be going to in episode 1 of the Around the World Challenge. So the location we will be going to for episode 1 of this series is an island that's located in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean. Well, maybe not in the middle, but it's located in the South Atlantic Ocean, pretty far off the coast of Africa. And it is a remote island, very, very remote. One of the most remote places on Earth that you can live. Until 2018, so like 6 years ago, this island did not even have an airport. Up until 2018, the only way to get to this island was via a ship. And the most common route for the ship to take was from South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa, to this island, and that was a 1,900-mile journey that took 5 days to complete. So not only did this boat ferry visitors to this island, it also carried the mail, it carried packages, produce, any goods that the people who live on this island needed to survive, basically, that they couldn't produce themselves. So you can see how remote this island really was. It's also a pretty small island for the people who are living on it. It's only 47 square miles, and only as of 2021, a little less than 4,500 people actually called this island home. The island is of volcanic origin, though the volcano is no longer active, which is great because it's so far away. It would be hard to do something if the volcano were to erupt. But because of it, it has a very rugged terrain. There's lots of hills, there's lots of valleys. The hills are filled with volcanic rock that can be dislodged and cause rock slides. While it hasn't in the past been a huge hub of tourism just because of how difficult it is to get there, the arrival of the airport made it a little bit easier. And there are two main reasons that people travel to this island. The first is just the outdoor adventure where you can go hiking, fishing, scuba diving, you can swim with whale sharks or go on a boat whale watching, dolphin watching, etc., etc., etc. And then the other reason that people travel to this island, and is probably also the most famous historical fact about this island, is that it was the place of Napoleon Bonaparte's second exile in 1815. Yes, 1815. And this is where he spent the rest of his life after his final defeat. So those who enjoy history come to this island to kind of see where he lived out the remainder of his life. So that is where we will be traveling to for this episode. I'm so excited to learn more about this through reading. And I guess it's time to reveal what the island's name is. It is St. Helena, and it's part of St. Helena Ascension Island in Trista de Cunha, which are a group of 3 islands that are also British overseas territory. So that is where we'll be traveling for this episode. I'm going to go start looking up some books that are set on this island. I don't know how difficult it is going to be to find them, but I'm going to take a look and then I will come back and kind of show you the options that we have to choose from. So I will see you in a little bit. So now we need to figure out what book we are going to choose that is set on this island. I found that the best way to do this is starting with a Google search. All right, so let's bring up Google. All right, so we have Google pulled up. We're going to search for a book set in St. Helena. All right, and that pulls up a Goodreads list, which is usually the first place I go and check. Goodreads, I found, usually have pretty good lists of books that are set in whatever country you're looking for. So for the St. Helena books, there are 26 books that Goodreads has that are set on the island. So let's go ahead and take a look. We'll look at the first one first, which is called Napoleon and Betsy, Recollections of the Emperor Napoleon on St. Helena by Betsy Balcombe. So this looks like it is a tale of a fallen emperor and the 13-year-old English girl that he befriended on the island. It's also the basis for a major Hollywood film, so that's interesting. And it's actually written by Betsy Balcombe back in the 1800s in her experience of being friends with Napoleon. And it looks like it's about 160 pages long, so pretty short. So that would be an option. It's a historical memoir, historical nonfiction novel. Or not novel, historical nonfiction book. All right, so that's an option. We have another book about Betsy and the Emperor, but I feel like if we're going to read about that, we might as well get the first-hand story from Betsy herself. We have Sailing Around the World. Usually these books aren't too good to choose because only a small portion of them focuses on the country that you want to read about. And that looks like it's the case for this one because the book is about his solo trip around the world. So not quite what we're going for. We can learn about the animals. We have a book of the 7 seas. Oh, here's one. It's called The Other Exile, The Remarkable Story of Fernando Lopez, the Island of St. Helena, and the Meaning of Human Solitude. So this book looks like it's a nonfiction historical account of Fernando Lopez's time on St. Helena. He was the first known inhabitant back in the 1500s when he jumped ship at St. Helena and ended up settling on the island with only a black cockerel for company. Then it looks like the King of Portugal came and sent a ship for him, and then when Lopez actually met the king, the only request that he had was returning to St. Helena. So that would be an option. It's 320 pages long, so a little bit longer than the other one. Let's see what else we got. All right, we got the West Coast of Africa, which is about more than just St. Helena. All right, and here's one. So this book is Remote, A Story of St. Helena by Lindsay Grattan Cooper. And it looks to be about the author who fell in love with St. Helena, ends up buying a second family home there in 1999, so more recently, and then found herself living there for nearly 10 years. And the time that she was living there was when the British government decided to build St. Helena's first airport. And you get to kind of learn about all the things that went on about that. So this book is definitely a little bit longer. It's 474 pages, but definitely an option. It's available on Kindle, which is important. All right, so some of the others we can learn about the birds, which doesn't really sound too exciting to me. This looks more like a travel book. May not even be available on Kindle. Again, we got more about Betsy and Napoleon. And the rest of them looks mostly about Betsy and Napoleon. So we have 3 pretty good options to choose from. We have Betsy's account of her friendship with Napoleon. We have the first person to ever live on the island, a nonfiction history book. And then we have the memoir, the more recent memoir. Having done this challenge for 2 years, I have found that memoirs are usually more fun to read, more interesting to read than nonfiction historical books. So of these 3 books that we have, we are going to go with Remote, A Story of St. Helena by Lindsay Grattan Cooper. Reading memoirs for this challenge is one of my favorite types of books to read because you really get a feel of what it's like to live in the country that you're reading about. And they're usually pretty quick reads, especially if they're well written. So this book may be 474 pages long, but hopefully it won't feel that long once you really get into the story, because it's going to feel like you're living there, living vicariously through the author herself. Especially in this scenario where the island is so remote, I'm interested to see the author's experience along with her family of what it's like to live in such a remote location and kind of the challenges that they face living there. So I think this is going to be a fun, interesting read. I think we're going to learn a lot, and I'm excited to get started and see where this journey takes us. So I'm going to get to reading, and I will check back in once I have some interesting things to share with you guys. So I'll be back in a little bit, I don't know when, and let you know what I'm learning and share all the information I got. So I'll see you soon. I am about halfway through the book Remote, or at least almost halfway. I think I'm like 2 percentage points off. But I have a lot of mixed feelings about this book, and let me explain why. There are definitely some positives to this book, but there are also some things I am just not enjoying reading. I will say that I am learning a lot about St. Helena. The author definitely incorporates some history into her memoir, and I have definitely learned more about St. Helena than I have ever known, obviously, because I didn't know a lot about St. Helena to begin with, so that wasn't, too hard. The way that some of the history is incorporated into the memoir, though, it's just not as enjoyable as it could be. I feel like she talks about her experiences, and then all of a sudden there's like 2 or 3 pages on just some history that is going on, whether it was Napoleon. Well, there hasn't even been a lot about Napoleon, but there's been about, different people who have immigrated to the place in the past. There was like 2 or 3 pages on just birds of St. Helena alone, which I felt could have been better scattered throughout the book, because I didn't really, I didn't really want to read about birds for 3 entire pages. It was just a lot, and I did not retain it very well. I cannot tell you a fact about any of the birds that I read. I have learned a lot about the airport, and then about the ship, the RMS St. Helena, that goes from Cape Town, South Africa to the island. The book started off nicely with her and her family purchasing their new home in St. Helena. There were some ups and downs to this purchase and to the renovation, which was well written and good to read about. But then after that, I feel like the book has just been having some ups and downs. The one issue I've been having with the way it's written is that it makes it feel like the author feels like she's above the locals who live in St. Helena, that she knows more and that her opinions are always right. I don't think that's actually the case for what this author feels like. It's just what it comes across when you're reading it. And I think it could have been edited better so that it didn't feel like that. For example, when they are talking about the airport, a lot of the locals want an airport, and there was a whole vote on the island to determine whether St. Helena should have an airport or not. And the people who were allowed to vote were obviously citizens of St. Helena, whether they lived on the island or if they were working, far away to send money back to their families. A lot of these people would go to the Falkland Islands and work there to send money back to their families, because there just wasn't a lot of jobs to support their families in St. Helena itself, it being such a small island. And the author felt that those people did not really know what was going on the island enough, even though they grew up there, and that they shouldn't be voting yes for the airport, because she felt that it was just going to entirely destroy the island. And it just came across that her way was correct, and no one was allowed to have any other opinions on this matter, because St. Helena does not need an airport. They can get by with the ship, and it doesn't matter what everyone else on the island thinks. And there's just been kind of multiple examples of this throughout the book, that her opinions are right and that she doesn't need to take into account other opinions, especially the locals. But other than those things, I am learning a lot about St. Helena. It is nice to kind of see the experiences of living on the islands and some of the difficulties. Like one time the RMS St. Helena broke down and needed repairs, which meant that the island couldn't get any shipments of any food, so the stores were getting very low and kind of the struggles with that. It also kind of talks about the long distance phone calls, how expensive those are when you're calling people off island. And it talks about the close-knit community that is St. Helena, how all the locals are very friendly and welcome visitors and tourists to their island to kind of experience St. Helena's life. Or not St. Helena's life, the life on St. Helena, I guess you could say. So those are my thoughts so far. Like I said, I don't think she actually thinks that she's better than everyone on the island, because you do get a glimpse where she appreciates the views of the islanders, the locals of St. Helena. I think it's the way the book was written, and I think it just could have used a little bit better edits so it didn't come across that way. So I'm going to go ahead and read the remainder of the book, and we'll see if I feel the same way at the end of the book or not. Like I said, I'm halfway through. The book is pretty long. It's 474 pages. I think it could have definitely been shorter, and some of these history lessons and things like that could have definitely been condensed a little bit. So we'll see what the next 200 and so pages are like, and I will check in with you once I finish the book. I do want to say overall this was a good choice for St. Helena, because I am learning a lot about the island, which is the whole goal of this challenge, around the world challenge. So I am still happy I picked this book. I just have, a couple little critiques here and there about it, which could have been fixed with a little bit better editing. So I'll be back in, I don't know, when I finish the books, however long that takes, and I will talk to you then. So I finally finished the book Remote, The Story of St. Helena, which is again the memoir by Lindsay Gratton Cooper. I do have some final thoughts on this book. I will say it did get better in the second half. I didn't feel as if the author was intruding, which is weird to say because it's a memoir, but intruding her ideas as much as she did in the first half, where it just felt like she knew best and everyone else had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't feel that way as much during the second half of the book, which was great because it was really starting to bug me in that first half of the book. There were parts though that I did feel that way. The second half of the book kind of paralleled the first half of the book otherwise. There were parts of her life in St. Helena interspersed with just historical facts that made you feel like you were reading a history book and weren't really tied in that well to what was going on in the story. I did finally learn the reason why the author really did not want an airport built on the island and preferred to keep the ship. And her opinion actually made sense. I wish she would have discussed that earlier on in the book, because I think it would have made the rest of the book flow a little bit better, because the airport was such a huge part of this book and the author's dislike of the airport was such a big part that being able to understand where she was coming from, I think would have made the book read a little bit better through those sections of the book. So let's talk about what I did like about the book. I will say it gave me a pretty good idea of what it was like to live on such a remote island in such a remote location, and kind of all the trials that came from that. It included like the ship could break down at any time, and if it did, then whatever cargo it was carrying on the ship to the island was delayed, whether that be fruits, foods, fuel even, and that could cause a lot of difficulties for the people living on the island depending what those items were. I also felt that the author's descriptions of the scenery of the island were really well done. It helped you to visualize what she was seeing and kind of where she was living, which was great. And overall, I think it was a great memoir to just kind of understand what life was like in St. Helena. So those were the things that I liked about the book. Let me get to the couple of things that I have as critiques for the book. Most of these critiques I talked about in the first half of this, and they kind of continued on in the second half. So I'm just going to kind of wrap it up with those critiques. The first one was how the historical facts and knowledge were interspersed throughout the book, it just did not make the book flow well. At one point, you're reading about the memoir, what life is like currently, and then all of a sudden, you're stuck inside a historical textbook, and it was just difficult to read those sections. And they weren't like little, like, couple of paragraphs. They would last for a couple of pages, and it was hard to get through them, especially when I'm reading this book more for the memoir than to read a historical textbook. Because if I wanted to do that, I could just pick one up and read it, or Google things online these days. So that was my first issue. The second issue was how at points in the book, the author just seemed like a know-it-all. And I don't think she was really like that in real life through the interactions that she had with some of the people living on the island. I think it was just the way it came across in the book. And it just made it feel like the author was always right. Her opinions were always right. And no one else's, unless they meshed with hers, were correct. And she was always in the right. Everyone else was in the wrong when there was like an argument or a conflict or anything like that. Again, I don't think this is what the author was truly like in real life. It's just how it came across in the book. And my third issue was how long the book was. It was 474 pages for a memoir. And yes, it did span over I think 10 years. But there was so much extraneous things that were in the book that probably could have been cut and made the book flow a little bit better. What it all comes down to with those three critiques, though, is editing. I think this book could have been edited better, and it would have been a much easier read than it turned out to be. This book took me way long to read just because I kept getting bogged down in certain sections. And I think with editing, it would have been a quicker read. It would have been a little bit more enjoyable. And my rating for this book, which is a 3.5, could have been bumped up to a 4 based on the more entertaining stories that she had in there. So that was Remote, the story of St. Helena. Again, it did give me a great idea of what it's like to live on the island, which was really the thing I was looking for the most. And if anyone is interested in knowing what island life is like, I would definitely recommend this book, just going into it knowing there may be sections that you want to skip through and just kind of focus on the entertaining stories and what island life really is like. So that's all I have. That is St. Helena, episode 1 of the Around the World Reading Challenge. I hope you enjoyed learning about St. Helena as much as I did, and I can't wait to see where we're going to next month. I hope everyone's May reading month is going great, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.